My name is Helmuts. Came all the way from Riga. Hello, Tallinn. It's good to be back. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Sonarworks. I'll quickly tell what Sonarworks is and then share a few of the war chest stories with you. So Sonarworks is a deep tech audio company. We are delivering individually perfected sound, and we have two segments that we are serving. Content creators, film, music, and games, and the content consumers, basically people that are actually enjoying the content afterwards. So we started off in the professional sound content creation segment. We have now become basically a standard for sound in a recording studio. We have more than 50,000 studios around the world using our technology when music or films are being created. And it has become a self-sustainable business. We are doing about $3 million a year. And actually, this quarter, we turned profitable on the professional product line. And at the moment, we've kind of become a well-recognized brand and have our own momentum already developing. There's actually most of the music that you would listen these days have actually been creating using our technology in the production process. There are now more difficult to find artists that doesn't use our technology than those that do. And where we are right now, we are expanding into the consumer space, and the business model we are doing is basically licensing our technology to consumer electronics industry. We have some exciting stuff coming up, so we are now integrating with the first consumer products. There are gonna be 2 headphone models coming out in autumn, a tablet, and we're also working now on a smartphone integration. So over the next half a year, we'll have quite a lot of consumer electronics products hitting the market with our technology integrated into them. And so we are now a team of 68, mostly located in the headquarters in Riga. We do have sales in US, China, and Korea, so the team is getting more diverse. But the main place we're working from Riga. We have now altogether raised around 8 million through several funding rounds. And my story is basically this. The people that know me very often ask me, so how the hell did you get into this so specific industry? Because unlike the previous speaker, I actually didn't have any connection to the music industry whatsoever when I went into it. So my story is of how you can build a deep tech, super specialized company without actually having any prior knowledge in that particular field. And it all started off actually with this company. This was the first company I founded. I had a business degree, and after we were finishing school, out of my university, most of the kind of graduates, they went on to become auditors, and I had an allergy towards audit, and I thought that I need to do anything just not to become an auditor. So with that motivation, we got some people around, and we set up on a journey. We said we're not gonna become auditors, we're gonna make our own company. We made the logo, we did some little bit of advertisement, and the first thing we did, we basically went to ski to Alps. We were young and we wanted to ski. And while I still remember, I was sitting on the slope, and we received a phone call, and I knew that that's one other big consulting company calling, and we were looking at the phone and thinking, should I pick it up or not, because it's sunny outside and so nice, and it's probably going to be a project. And anyways, we picked it up, and it was a consulting company. They wanted to give us a project. We came back home to Riga, and we are going to this negotiation, and that's literally how the whole thing started, how I got infected by the entrepreneurship disease. And once you get infected, you will never be cured out of it. That's what the statistics say. So we were going on this negotiation and discussing among ourselves. So, they're going to give us a project. So how we're going to price it? Like, what price should we ask? And we were like, our colleagues are getting like 800 a month back then. And we are like, we should not go lower than 800 a month, because it would be kind of bad if we would be working in our own company and receiving less than our colleagues that went to work in audit. And we went into the negotiation. And literally, like, we don't have anything, like, no prior knowledge. We're just out of university and we want to teach people how to live. And we are sitting there negotiating the price. We were clever enough not to name the price first, and the first price they called out was 2,000. And we were like, whoa, sitting there, trying not to smile, and eventually ended up like making a deal at 2,500. So that we went out, it was euphoria. It's like, wow, this is what entrepreneurship is like. You just get paid. You don't do anything, you get paid much more. That was really the wrong type of idea. Afterwards, was an incredibly hard journey of building up a consulting company. A few months later, we ended up having 3 months without any revenue at all, and just paying all the costs ourselves and doing like crazy hours of work. But we managed to build it into a consulting company. I sold it 6 years afterwards. I was about 25 when I sold it. It was a fairly good exit. So it was financially really well off. The company was kind of a cash cow. And after that, we started I was already infected, so we thought, okay, we'll do some other things. We went into trying to build software for ships. We tried to do some applications for food, and we did some applications for Facebook, and all of those were complete wipeouts, like total disasters. And that was a very important lesson that I learned, because after this first success that I had very early on in life, building a company, we approached the next ones with a completely wrong approach, because we thought that we know everything and kind of nothing can go wrong, and it's really not the way business happens. And I actually later learned out statistically the biggest chance of a failure is after you have the first easy success. That's like statistically you are most likely to fail when you do the next thing. So. And then after all those things fail, we met an engineer who was an audio engineer and who had invented some pieces of technology. And we hooked up with this guy, and we started to kind of investigate the idea. But ourselves, me and my co-founder Martin, we didn't have audio background, so we couldn't really tell whether the stuff actually works, whether it's good or not. So the first thing that we did, we started going around locally, visiting the local recording studios, showing them some crappy demo that we had and asking, what do they thought of the product. And the feedback was mostly super negative, like it was bad and nobody needed anything of what we were doing. And we were thinking like, should we drop it or go on? But we kind of realized that the opinion of those peoples we were talking to like really didn't matter. They were just some kind of local studio engineers. Nobody cared about them, and their opinion really didn't matter. And we set ourselves a goal that if we really want to understand whether this technology works, we have to speak to a Grammy-awarded engineer. So we basically Googled, where do you find Grammy-awarded engineers? And the Google told that the biggest chance is in Los Angeles, because that's where the music and film industry is mostly concentrated. So Sonarworks started basically like this. I bought a one-way ticket to Los Angeles with a goal to show this crappy demo to Grammy-awarded engineers. The only thing I had was a phone number of one guy who worked in a studio in Los Angeles, and that's actually the picture that you see there. So I flew into Los Angeles, I called up this guy, I said, hey, we're from Eastern Europe, we have a cool tech, do you want to see? And as American, he said, yeah, sure, come in, show us what you got. And the guy was absolutely blown away within like it took him 1 minute to understand what the technology did. He was completely blown away. We were lucky that this guy had actually previously worked with Eric Clapton, so he was kind of high-level engineer. So the same day what happened, he called in his friends. Hey, I have some crazy Eastern Europeans showing me some crazy stuff. Come in, you have to see it. So some friends came along. All of them were blown away. I went to their studios, and so it went on every next day. Just, you start from 1, then you have 3, then you have 9 contacts, and so it went on. In 3 days, I called up Martins and said, hey, you have to come over because I can't handle all these contacts. So Martins came over. We ended up spending quite a lot of time in Los Angeles just visiting these engineers. So the main thing that I understood there, and that has been all along our journey, is that the journey is really like a set of black boxes. Like, you do not know what it's going to be. You do not know how to solve those problems. You just go into the black box and try to figure it out. And this has been all along, so on this journey. Continuing on this image is of the same first trip. So what's happening here is we were driving in a car to one of those meetings in a district in Los Angeles called Studio City. Believe it or not, there is actually a district called Studio City because literally every second building is a studio. So we got lost. And we stopped on the crossroad, and some just guy walked by, and we were like, hey, can you help us out? We're lost, like, where is this address? And he was like, hey, what are you doing here? And we were like, oh, we're selling some studio software. He was like, hey, get out of the car. I'm like, I have a studio, so you have to show me. So we literally stopped on a crossroad, got out, and were pitching to this guy right there on the crossroad our studio software. So stuff like this can only happen in the epicenter of your market. So it would never, ever happen in Latvia, would never ever happen in Estonia. It can only happen in Los Angeles. Just on a crossroad you run into, and this was a big actually film producer who had just got funding for his next movie. The biggest lesson of all was actually going that, doing that first black box thing where you just go off to your market. We ended up spending more than a month in Los Angeles. We met more than 100 studios. We ended up actually meeting 8 Grammy awarded engineers, and almost all of them were blown away. And that's basically what made all the difference, because literally our first beta users, the product was kind of long time pre-beta kind of stuff. And our first pre-beta testers were actually Grammy awarded engineers who kind of liked the concept and spend their time actually testing this buggy software. The very, very important thing that we understood was the technology worked, but the product was completely wrong. It would never pick up in that market. And we ended up then coming back, spending 2 years simply building the product the way it needed to be, but we now knew what the market needs. We knew what these people breathe and think and what they eat. We drank beer with them. We had dinners with them, with these Grammy awarded engineers, and that's how we kind of learned what we actually have to do. So that really changed the whole course. Now, the other big lesson that we have learned over the years was, again, we didn't have any knowledge about kind of the industry and the specific segment. So when we came back and we started building this product, we didn't have any kind of star wunderkind sitting in the garage and knowing everything and kind of blowing everybody away. We basically didn't have any prior knowledge. So what we were focusing on building teams and building processes around those teams. Basically having like a scientific approach where you just, put a hypothesis, you kind of put a path of how to try to solve it. You try to solve it, look at the results, and repeat and continue this process. So our company has from the scratch been built around teams and processes, and we've always tried to shy away from these star performers. And in this one, I want to share a story that I think is very, very common. So we are quite a lot into B2B sales. So when you are into B2B sales, at some point you will realize that US is actually a big market. Most companies usually realize that, then they want to go to US, and they quickly realize that US is kind of different culture, so they end up willing to have a team, sales team in US. And I'm yet to actually find successful examples where local companies are managing sales teams in US, because sales culture in US is very much this kind of star performance based. And we now actually do have sales in US, and it's working out, but the way we got there was like the last recruitment process for salespeople. We hired 1 out of 1,000 applications, and I can assure you 999 of those applications would be complete failure by now. The one person we got one is a unique one that actually kind of can work together with European teams because of like cultural background, diverse cultural background that this person has. But we did hire a star sales performance that almost killed the company within 2 months. It was just incredible. Like the culture differences were so stark that, and the mismatch was so great that we literally almost got killed within like 2 months. We were doing really fine, and suddenly it was all like a disaster all over the place. So ours is a story of you can really actually face, and audio tech is very complicated stuff. So you can solve some really complicated problems by simply having the right processes and the right teams, and you don't really need to have these star performers in your teams. So the last thing, and this has been kind of all over, the theme is being brought up all the time. So doing a company is incredibly hard, like super hard, super stressful. I don't know, like the best example that I've seen, it's like chewing glass. So that is kind of what it is to build a startup, because all kind of stuff is going to happen to you in the worst possible times. And usually when bad times start to roll, there's like lots of bad stuff that happens at the same time. And the big question is, how do you get through this? Like, how do you actually survive all that crazy stuff happening? And quite frankly, not everybody survives. I mean, there are some bad stories also where people don't survive these super hardships. For me, the way I survived, and this is kind of now dating back to before we started Sonarworks. So after I finished this first company, which was a great success, I basically didn't know how to challenge myself, because I like finished this cool university. I just made a company in 5 years. I had more money than I knew how to spend. And I didn't know how to challenge myself. So I started going into fairly extreme sports. So I crossed Mongolia on a mountain bike. I went into mountaineering. I've climbed mountains literally all over the world. I ended up spending half a year in Himalayas, climbing many peaks in Himalayas, doing some crazy stuff there. And on one of those trips, I was getting more and more extreme and kind of hooked up on adrenaline. And on one of those trips, I had 3 near-death experiences over a course of like 1 month. So it was kind of getting out of control, and I was just getting more extreme. And what changed everything was I ended up in a Himalaya, in Ladakh region, in a city called Leh. I had some days there to spare, and I was going out on the street, and I saw this little ad that said meditation retreat with like phone numbers on this piece of paper. And I was like, I have like a few days, so let's do meditation retreat, whatever, let's see what happens. So I really didn't know what I was signing up for. That was like an extremely hardcore stuff. We were brought like at an altitude of 4.5 kilometers, there was a meditation center, which basically means I had a tent with a broken roof. But the cool side was that I could watch stars in the night, and it's pretty impressive in the Himalayas. And the whole course was like, we did 11 days of 10 hours a day meditation straight. And when I went into the course, every day I was walking out of the the meditation hall, there was like a huge mountain across me. And when I went there, every day I was going out and thinking like, wow, such a cool mountain. I can climb it from here and there. And like, you know, is it a 6,000 peak or a 7,000 peak? Like, and I was having these thoughts. And by the end of that course, I went out. And I remember clearly, I watched at that mountain and I realized it's just a pile of rock. Basically, all those stories that I was thinking in my head were meanings I was attaching to a thing that's essentially is empty. And afterwards, when I returned back to kind of real life, I did quite a lot of meditation. I still continue that practice. And what it taught me that fundamentally things are actually empty. All those kind of attachments and those stresses that we put are just things that our mind attaches to those empty things. So when things get really, really tough, and they eventually do, at those craziest moments, I can always go back and remember that in the core, all those things are empty. It's just my mind attaching the meaning to them. So that's what keeps me going and allows me to survive.
Thank you, thank you. We don't have too much time for the questions. The question that arrived from the audience is the US good place to go with every idea or the startup? Does the location matter that much?
Definitely not for all the businesses. US is relevant. There are many that US is relevant. Our industry absolutely relevant. So you have to look at case by case. Is location important? Yes, it is. Meaning, I think it's a bad idea if your core market is in US, it's a bad idea to sit here because you'll never learn how that market works without actually going there.
All right. Well, thank you one more time. Give it up for Helmuts Bems. Thank you.